Awesome. Cool.
Okay, so welcome, Alyssa. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So just tell me a little bit about your background and your family life growing up. And you can take these questions kind of however you interpret them. Feel free to go with it.
All right. So I spent my early childhood in Pennsylvania, and then in seventh grade, which was September of 2001, we moved to New Jersey, where I met you, and spent the rest of my time there until going to college down in North Carolina, and now I'm in Virginia. I'm the oldest of two. I have a sister who's about 3 years younger than me. Um, and growing up, I mean, just a regular family, with the exception, I will say, because I'm not ashamed of this, and I don't think anyone should be ashamed of anything that has to do with, their bodies and whatnot. Um, the big difference between me and a lot of my friends is I have epilepsy. And so normal family, but my childhood was a little different in the sense that I wasn't allowed to sleep over friends' houses. And it wasn't that my parents didn't trust my friends or my friends' parents. They did not want to give those parents the responsibility of dealing with if I had a seizure. But that's okay because people came and slept over my house. But yeah, it was just a normal childhood.
Cool. What is it like being the older sister? I know you mentioned you have a younger sister. I know she's three years younger. Um,
Yeah.
I know that I'm the baby of my family, and my brother never really came across like the big protective brother. But I don't know what you consider your dynamic with your sister.
So I would have to say that not in major ways, but being the older of the two, I was definitely the guinea pig child. I do remember I didn't get a cell phone until I was in high school, but my sister got one when she was still in middle school, and that was a point of contention between not just me and my sister, but me and my parents, because I didn't understand. And they had said, well, she's doing drama club, she's in school after hours. And I don't know if you remember, the middle school did have a payphone, but after hours they would shut certain hallways down, and so they didn't know if it would always be accessible. And here I'm going like, well, I did theater in middle school too and stayed after hours, and I'm doing theater now in high school. So what's up with that? um, but aside from that, the dynamic with my sister is one of love. We are siblings who don't feel the need to talk or text every day. And sometimes we can go maybe 2 weeks without talking. And I know personally my mom never quite understood that. She's like, why haven't you talked to your sister in a week? And we're both busy living our lives. We know we love each other. This is the dynamic that works for us, because I have friends who talk to their siblings multiple times a day, and it's just the dynamic they have. But my sister and I love each other very much. We've gone on several vacations together as we've gotten older. We both now have puppies, so we bond over that. And then we do sit there and, we'll say, hey, haven't actually talked to you in a while. Let's FaceTime. And we'll spend a lot of time on there. Given recent events, I do worry about her more. I'm always worried about her. You're worried about your family when you're not all together. But she works in a hospital. And she's not in an emergency room. She floats on rehab floors because she's a physical therapist. But when COVID really, I'll say, exploded in the New York City area, I worried about her, not just working in the hospital, but getting to and from. And, as the hospital started to fill up, they started using physical therapy areas to put patients. So of course, although I always worry about my sister on a day-to-day basis and I care for her, that anxiety spiked, and I found myself keeping in touch with her a little bit more, even if it was just through social media.
Yeah,
We
and
and to send stuff.
She's in New York too, so.
I'm sorry?
I was gonna say she's in New York too, so it's even more like, epicenter, crazy.
Yeah, and but you know what, the good thing is that she was never worried about PPE. The hospital was well stocked, so they were lucky there. And she's a careful person. But as things have started to loosen up, I can feel my anxiety for her and what she does starting to go down.
That's good. Keeping on the same type of question, being a woman, I feel, I'm sure you do too, that relationships with other females can be a little like taxing or a struggle at times. If you're comfortable, can you describe how your relationship is with your mother?
So mom,
Nice face.
that's a really good question. So I have a really good relationship with my mom. Of course, we butted heads growing up over what I'm going to call the normal things that daughters tend to butt heads with their mothers about. And I think the hardest transition started when I went away to college. They were in New Jersey, I was in North Carolina, and it used to be like my parents, especially my mom, wanted to speak with me like 3 times a week. And that was a lot to accommodate, especially as a freshman. And then I said, well, let's just try 1 day a week, which was fine with me, not okay with mom. And so we compromised on twice a week. And it was just really to catch up and all of that. But then post-college, I was living in North Carolina and my parents are still up in New Jersey. And at that time, again, still in transition, I still kind of felt like my mom wanted to know what I was doing more than I felt like I wanted to share with what I was doing. And from her side, it's coming from you are my child, right? You'll always be my baby. And it's just, I want to know, if I don't hear from you by X time, should I be worried? But from my side, I'm like, I'm out of your house now. I'm an adult. And I'm trying to live my life. Like, I'm not going to text you every time I go out and say, I'm going out for the night. I'll let you know when I'm home. But again, that's just kind of my style. I'm a bit more independent. I don't really like having to check in. So I would say that was really only the really only point of contention as I got older, because as I got older, I understood why my parents didn't let me do certain things when I was younger. So when I was little and we found out, I had epilepsy, I didn't understand why I couldn't sleep over people's houses. And so that's when you get angry at your parents, especially your mom. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, so I saw her a lot more often. She dealt with me on a daily basis. And a lot of that kind of came out in anger towards my mom. Why aren't you letting me, do this? All my friends get to do it. And so as I got older and I realized why, of course that melted away. But the butting of heads, aside from that transition of I'm out of the house now, was really kind of just focused on the normal kind of stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense too. Like as you get older, things are definitely going to change, hopefully for the better.
Yeah.
I know that you've lived in multiple states, and now that you're in Virginia, is there another place that you've always wanted to try living in?
I don't know about wanting to try. There's areas that appeal to me from a distance. So it's one of those where I like the thought of this area, but I don't know if I'd actually want to live there. So the Pacific Northwest is one of those. The Seattle area, even into Vancouver, the aesthetic there is very me. So in theory, it seems like it would be a good place. When it comes to other areas of my life, such as expenses and job opportunities, not so much. And then the super laid back part of me would love to move to Hawaii. I went in 2014 with my sister and I fell in love with the island of Maui. And I said, I just want to move here. Like, I didn't want to get back on the plane to come back home. But you know, when you talk to local people, they're like, "Oh, it's tourist season. This is when we make our money." A lot of us actually go back to the mainland in the winter because the jobs here start to dry up a bit. And that's not my style. So the scenery and the lifestyle of the summer was beautiful. I thought it would be awesome. That style, not much. And then the only other place where I've kind of jokingly said I'd love to move here, but again, don't think I really ever will, would be Iceland. And I know you and I went there together, and I fell in love with Iceland. I liked the culture, I loved the people, but the downside is because there are jobs there. You can work in Iceland. The downside is the winters. I hate the cold, and when you start talking about like below freezing, that's not exciting.
I know that you have dabbled in the world of radio. What originally drew you to that, and what made you eventually leave?
So I've always loved music. I think music is extremely powerful and can do a lot for people. And, you know, up until recent years, really the only way to listen to a lot of music was on the radio. I mean, growing up, we had cassettes for a while and then we had CDs, but to get a variety of music at once, you had to listen to the radio. And so that is what originally got me interested. And then in college, as a communications major, you had to pick an extracurricular activity of sorts to get experience in communications, and radio was one of them. So we established a campus radio station, and I said, well, of course, that's for me, and I want to do it on the hosting side because I found it really fun. People could request songs. Some people did talk radio, which was really cool to listen to, but I just love music. And because I had started doing that, when it came time to really look at internships, I focused a lot on radio, especially in the New York, New Jersey area, and did end up interning at 95.5 WPLJ, which sadly no longer exists anymore. But it was kind of like top 40 radio, and I did it with the the marketing department, and they really helped me because as they got to know me, they realized how much I like broadcasting. And so on days where we weren't super busy, I would go in with the afternoon host and his producer to kind of learn what it actually took to put on a huge show, because the board at High Point was really easy to use. There weren't a ton of buttons. I didn't have to worry about inserting commercials or sound effects or all this other stuff. And I got that experience there. In terms of what kind of got me out of radio was honestly lack of employment opportunity at the time. There really weren't a ton of jobs in radio. And that went for multiple departments. I'm not saying, oh, I couldn't get a job as a broadcaster, which is an even narrower field than if you're even just looking to get into marketing or sales. And I wanted a full-time job. I was working part-time for PLJ, which I thoroughly enjoyed because I was still with the marketing department, but it was post-college and I was really looking for that full-time job. And it was out of necessity that I was offered a full-time job back at my alma mater and had to step away from radio. And then, life goes on, things happen, and I kind of fell out of, listening to the radio. But I'm pretty sure I'm one of a few of my friends who actually still listens to the radio in the car, and I don't hook up my phone right away.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see like how many people actually do that. Tell me about your experience publishing a book.
Oh, okay. That was both exciting and nerve-wracking because I knew I had this story in me that needed to get out, and it wasn't so much autobiographical as it was, I'm just using something that I experienced and I'm going to insert fiction into it. So I used my semester of study abroad, and I built this story for a girl who went really where I went. She went and studied abroad in Italy, and she meets this up and coming actor and starts to fall in love. And, you know, because he's up and coming, it's about my interpretation of trying to establish a relationship with someone who ultimately puts you in the public spotlight. You know, we see things now where, you know, celebrities can't walk out their door without a million photos being taken of them. And it's really, how do you establish that relationship? But it was fun to write. It was fun to reimagine almost my study abroad experience had that happened to me. When it came to publishing, this is where the anxiety kind of kicked in. When you're new to writing and people say, oh, just Google it, you know, the internet is your friend, you find a lot of information about the right way to submit to, you know, a writing agent or a publisher directly, because some of them have different requirements, what you need to include in your, you know, letter of inquiry, all this other stuff. But, you know, you start saying, because it's like, here's 5 agents that work at one publisher, but each of them specializes in something else. And so you need to make sure it goes to the right agent. Or you'll have 2 people that specialize in something, but you have 2 people that specialize in fiction, but only one of them wants what's termed chick lit, right? Chick literature. And so if you pick the wrong person, they sit there and say, well, I'm fiction, but your book is chick lit, and this isn't for me. And then you kind of just reach a point where you receive either no responses or a ton of rejections, and it's like, well, I want to put this book out there. You know, I know it's no prize-winning 5-star book, but it's a story I've written, and I've poured heart and soul into it, and I want to get it out there. And a coworker of mine at the time had actually read a newspaper, wow, a hard print newspaper article about Kindle Direct and Amazon's publishing services and Create Space. And so I said, you know what? This route isn't really working. What does it hurt to put it out there? And so I started to use Create Space and Kindle Direct, and decided to do that. And my books have stayed there. You know, it was a 2-part series, and I stopped submitting. And a lot of times, you know, the more I read, it sounds like when you talk to other independent authors, if you start the self-publishing route, a lot of editors and agents don't want you to keep submitting that book to them. They kind of say, well, you've taken this route, that's, you know, that's it. And I'm okay with that, because I know it's not the best book, even though it's still mine. I'm okay with just having it on.
Nice. As a person who loves to travel, one could guess that you're pretty open-minded and fearless. When planning a trip, what are some major things that you consider before, like when you're choosing where to go next?
Well, you can see my travel map behind me. Scratch off all the places I've been. So the first thing is really just a desire to go to a particular place for whatever reason. Is it tropical and I'm really just looking for that beach getaway? Is it cultural? Is it historical? Is it just scenery? Have I seen so many pictures and videos of a place that I've reached the point where it's like, I really need to see this? And it depends also on mood and who's available to travel with me. I have not traveled alone before. I've always had a friend or some family go with me. I'm not afraid to travel alone. It just hasn't, you know, come up. So, for example, right now, Scotland and Switzerland are both so high on my list of places to travel, and I just cannot wait. And a lot of it has to do with scenery. I want to see, you know, the mountains and the highlands and all these beautiful little towns along pristine blue water on Switzerland's lakes. And then a lot of times it can also be just a new experience. So I went to Bali in 2019 with a friend, and it came after both of us having seen so many beautiful pictures of it. And it was my first time going to a poor country. And it was one of those experiences where you do truly say, this place is beautiful, but there's stuff below the beauty. And we never felt uncomfortable. The Balinese people, honestly, are the nicest people I've ever met traveling somewhere. And I had such an appreciation for their culture, because what they believe in Balinese Hinduism is a lot of what I believe in as well. And I just felt really connected. So yes, it was extremely beautiful. We saw beautiful scenery, beautiful beaches. We experienced some great cuisine, but the culture is really what's going to stick with me.
Nice. If you were going to go lie out on a beach or relax somewhere, do you have a favorite author or a genre of books that you gravitate towards normally? Or again, is that just like your mood?
A lot of it is mood. I tend to lead towards fiction because I like where people can take fiction sometimes. So whether that's just real world fiction, like what I wrote, or you hit fantasy even, where people are creating their own worlds, like Tolkien and George R.R. Martin, you know, these fantastical kind of worlds that are like, you know, this doesn't exist, and part of me would love to live in this world and the other part is terrified to live in this world. So the fantasy adventure, I've got a stack of books right now that I need to get to. One is a biography. The other two are just marketing books to refresh my memory on, you know, different marketing techniques. One was recommended by the Skim actually on their daily reads. It's called Expectation, which I think is relevant because it's about younger women in their 30s, what they wanted their life to be or thought their life would be by then versus what it is. So I found it very timely. And then the other one is the Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan, which kind of, depending who you ask and talk to, could have been considered a catalyst of the feminist movement. And that really just came from me watching the miniseries Mrs. America and the fight for the Equal Rights Amendment. The book was brought up a lot in there because the character, you know, there's a woman playing Betty who's a real person. And so they talk about it a lot. And I wanted to understand what she wrote that got people so hot and bothered over, you know, the roles of women and how dare you, you know, say that you want more, just the opportunity to do more.
Just briefly, since we're running out of time, I know that you use Groupon. I don't know if that's all you've used for travel, but I know that you use it at least for Iceland. Do you have more pros versus cons or no cons, or like what are your thoughts on using Groupon for traveling? So I know a lot of people tend to think, I myself too have thought of it at some point or another, that if it's on Groupon, maybe it's lesser value, even though because it's cheaper. Which I know in Iceland, I had a blast and that was like, you didn't have to think of anything. It was perfect. But I don't know if that's how your experience was in general with them.
So that's how it kind of started, is I was always looking for travel deals. And of course, Groupon popped up as one of the first results. And the prices are good. When you compare what the Groupon deal is versus what those things would cost individually, it always does work out that it is a deal. The downside of booking through Groupon, I would say, is that the travel agency, and usually, you know, they're smaller businesses, doesn't get all the money. They actually get a lot smaller of a portion. So I found that while Groupon has great deals, if you go directly to these agency websites, you're either bound to find the same exact deal or maybe even a little less and maybe a bit more flexibility with your booking. So I actually, well, my last several trips have been through Groupon. I don't have ones booked currently because of everything going on. I find travel agency websites more than I do Groupon now.
Nice. That's interesting. It makes sense too. Like, why not? Obviously, they're giving a discount. They might as well give a discount and make more off of it. That's
right, because they're already offering a discount on the trip, which means they're getting less money anyway,
yeah.
And then deduct, you know, whatever Groupon charges them to host that deal, you know, then that's even less money. And I actually, only found that out by talking to a travel agent. I had booked, through Groupon, or bought through Groupon, but you book through the agent and the dates weren't working, and he kind of explained how it works. So it's not a shot against Groupon or anything like that. It's more just, once I found that out, I really started to consider, well, can I get this trip directly through an agency for around the same amount of money, and know that they get more of the commission off of it.
I want to talk about body image. I know that you've recently completed a half marathon in Disney World, which is awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey with exercise, healthy eating, all of that stuff?
So that is a lifelong journey. I was born at a healthy weight, but it did not take long for me to become, slightly overweight, more overweight, and then eventually, the way the BMI index is now, be considered obese. And I know a lot of people have a lot of different thoughts about the BMI index as it is now, and I am one of them. But it was one of those things where my family never really paid attention to portion sizes. The only person in my immediate family who was not overweight growing up was my sister, and she was such a picky eater, and I think that kind of contributed to that. But it wasn't one of those things where if we cooked pasta, you measured out the serving size. It was more like, okay, well, here's 2 scoops of pasta, whatever that may be. And exercise wasn't really pushed. It was one of those things where like, hey, why don't you, go out and do this? But it wasn't forced. And as I got older, I had to really start doing that on my own because I didn't like the way I looked. We are shown a lot of beauty ideals and the standard of beauty, and I never fit into any of it. And when I kind of started, realizing something needed to change for me, it was the very beginnings of the body positive movement. I hadn't heard of Ashley Graham at that point yet, but it didn't take me long to find out who she was. And she kind of became the public person that I started to follow in terms of not just coming to terms with your body, but also being okay with realizing there are things I need to change, and what I really did kind of decide to do was I got into weightlifting and Zumba when I was living in North Carolina. And I was really seeing my body change then. I was leaning out, I was a really nice shape. And so even though I hadn't lost a super amount of weight, I liked the way my body had started to change. And then I moved to Virginia, took a long time to find a trainer, kind of fell off the tracks. And then I watched my sister run her first marathon. And I loved the experience and said, one day I want to do something similar. 2019 rolled around. She did the Disney Challenge, which was a half marathon followed by a full marathon the next day. And I said, I need to try a half marathon. And my mom and I both trained. We did it. It was tough. It was my plan that whole year of training to train and lose weight. And the losing weight didn't really happen, but I got through the half marathon. And now I need to get back into it because I am already signed up for a half in November of this year. And I need to get back to training and get my eating on track. And it's not for anyone else. It's for me. And that's something I'm really trying to tell myself more.
And that's like the most important thing, because if you're just trying to like fit into a pair of pants to like show everybody, look, I fit into these pants, it's not doing anything for you.
Right, exactly. So. And I liked the way I felt. I have it right here. When I collected this after the finish line at Disney, I cried. Growing up, let's be honest, you knew me growing up, you knew, I was overweight, and you've seen me through that. I never expected to do 13.1 miles.
Oh, that's great. I know, I cried at your video when you posted it. I was like, oh my God, she's crying. And I started crying.
It's something I will never forget. And I actually watched it the other day because I was feeling a little down about my body because I hadn't gotten back out there to run. And I rewatched it, and of course I cried. I was like, look, you've done it once, you can do it again. And I do plan on hanging this, so it's a daily reminder for me. To just, I found something I liked, and I do enjoy running. It's hard. You need mental fortitude a lot of the time, especially the further you get into the distances. But I enjoy it because even if I'm listening to music, I think about a lot of things, and before you know it, you know, you've hit the 5 mile mark or the 6 mile mark or whatever. And I like the way it feels, but I know in order for me to be my best running self, I need to work on my nutrition and my weight, and I need to do more cross training, because I may be able to hold myself up now, but it hurt. Miles 9 through 13, my lower back was starting to hurt because my core strength wasn't there. And I had a pain that was shooting down my leg. And I know any race you do, you're gonna, you know, have some pain, but I felt like if I was more fit and, you know, weighed less and had more of that core strength, maybe those pains wouldn't have been there, because honestly, miles 11 through 13, I truly questioned if I was going to be able to finish the race.
Very cool. All right. Well, that pretty much sums it up. Using Zoom, we're limited, crazy world. But I just wanted to say thank you for sharing yourself. Kaleidoscope Soul is about just the different sides of us. So thanks for sharing, being open, and, you know, being who you are.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm very honored to be your first interview, and I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, who else you get to interview and seeing how Kaleidoscope Soul takes off. I think it's really important for us to share different sides of ourselves that maybe we only keep to ourselves, or our close-knit group of friends. But a lot of people are starting to realize you can share it with other people. It does matter. Some people really are looking for, you know, things you've said.
Yeah, exactly. Especially now, it's such a different world, and people don't realize that people have backstories and that's gotten them to where they are, whether it be the violent things they're doing or the good things they're doing or whatever it is. So
Mm-hmm.
thanks.
Well, thank you. I look forward to more.